All right, so I'm currently on the phone with Kevin. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview series. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Kevin Borland, and I am a solo musician these days. But I've been in and out of bands since high school, and I'm pushing 50 now, so that's a long time. I like to do concept albums currently, although I started out and I've done everything from metal to punk to pop. I was in cover bands and original bands, you name it. But these days, I'm more into producing my own music and kind of in the maybe David Bowie-ish sort of sphere of genres, or St. Vincent or something like that, Talking Heads type of music. If there's a connection between those three artists at all.
Awesome. Very cool. We'll definitely get into some of that. But to begin, I always like to kind of dive into, how somebody first came in contact with music. So tell me a bit about, how you first discovered music. What about it kind of really made an impact on you?
Sure. Well, music generally, I mean, has always been around in my life, since I was as long as I can remember. My family all was into music and stuff like that too. And, I had one of those boom boxes at an early age and, I'd go to sleep with it and like put it on really low next to my ear and listen to, all my cassettes that my father had made of his record collection and all. And, both of his brothers played guitar professionally. And my grandfather, my mom's dad, also had a guitar around the house. This guitar was my first instrument, just basically from just screwing around with that thing. Figured out what a G chord was on my own and all, and then didn't really start writing music until way later, or thinking of it as an instrument or as a potential career move until after high school. But that's kind of how I got started.
Okay, so throughout, early childhood and then high school and everything, you were more just kind of tinkering with the idea of playing an instrument, and it wasn't kind of something, set in stone that you decided was going to, be in your life.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think high school is kind of where that changed a bit because all of a sudden it went from just being something to mess around with to something that's kind of cool, right?
Sure. So tell me about that transition. What was it that happened in high school that really kind of made you realize that that was going to be a part of your life?
A couple things. One of them is and my high school generally, I think, had really excellent teachers. And, I'm still in contact with a lot of them to this day. I go with one of them to a concert at the Stone Pony every year, actually. But in particular, for music, we had Mr. Zatorsky. He also did the marching band and stuff like that. And he had a great idea. We had this art survey where we had to go around and do like, a month of home ec, a month of cooking, a month of wood shop, a month of music, right? And what he did for his music slot was he had the entire class record the Beach Boys' Kokomo. Everybody had to learn one instrument or sing one part or something. And he did like a multi-track recording of a Beach Boys song. And that was like incredible. And of course, I picked guitar and he recruited me into his marching band and I played some drums in there too. And he's turned out like, I don't know if he knows it, but his former students have been like, one of my friends is the drummer for Rachel Platt, and another one is the horn player for Corey Wong. So he's turned out some pretty good music students through his class.
That's pretty cool. So early on in high school, like it sounds like you had, somebody in your life that was very kind of encouraging and cultivating to having music around you and with you.
Yes. And even my uncle would come to visit who played guitar, and he would show me some stuff on his guitar. And actually his, I think, girlfriend at the time played keyboards, and she showed me a little bit of that. And my physics teacher, I should also mention, he's the one I go to the concert with every year, Mr. Remley. He put on this talent show in high school, and that was kind of a fun and defining moment for my music too, where we played some gigs before that because I started a band right after that music class. But this is like senior year. He put on this talent show. And it's one thing to, go out to some bar in New York because, we were too young to play in New Jersey, but the bar in New York would let us play. So it's one thing to play to a bunch of strangers. It's another thing to get on the stage in front of everyone and who means anything in your life, the entire high school community, and go up there and be a rock star for a day,
Sure. Excellent. So tell me how that kind of manifested after high school. What did you kind of get yourself into? Did you start looking for bands to play in? What was your next move?
Yes, I ended up going to MIT actually. So which was 4.5 hours from where I was. So unfortunately, none of the same band members. Although I would use them in projects later in my career. Yeah, I joined a fraternity, and we started like a house band with another fraternity, actually, because we didn't have enough members in the band. And we went on to win like Battle of the Bands, a multi-round Battle of the Bands up there in Boston a couple years in a row and stuff. And we were a cover band during college. Most of my bands have been original stuff, but that was a cover band.
Okay. And so tell me about how you kind of focused on creating your own music. Not that cover bands aren't important and everything. They definitely have, a niche that they fit into, and they have a huge audience draw for sure. But I like to focus more on kind of the creative and side of all of musicality in general.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, by the way, too. I mean, that was the advantage of being in a cover band. I mean, the shows were just much larger than any shows I've had as a solo artist, or as an original. But I think some of the important things about playing my own music, the first time I really had some besides that multi-track experience in high school. Later in high school, I decided we were going to do an original album with the metal band that I was in high school. And we had an interesting experience in the studio in that the guy who was doing the recording for us and the engineering, or who in theory was supposed to do that work for us, he had another gig. He was doing the sound for MTV Unplugged. So basically what ended up happening, because that's the big paying gig, not, some money from some high school kids, right? So he would just leave us alone in his recording studio. And it was, this is back in the day. So it's not like his little cakewalk or whatever on his computer, but like a real recording studio with all kinds of crazy equipment and giant mixing console and stuff. And it was like flying a plane, just learning how to do that and learning how to basically produce our own album. And that was, an experience that, kind of transformed, I think, my music quite a bit.
Sure. So tell me about how, those beginning processes and stepping into producing your own stuff transition to like this big project that you have of, making concept albums of a different style of music every time.
Yeah, well, it was kind of gradual, and then I took a break from music, actually, that sort of prompted that. I had another big experience in the studio, and that was, well, getting to that, I guess. I did another original band after college, and this was with some of the same members from high school and some friends from high school. Actually, the drummer was the brother of my high school drummer, and I bought a recording studio from a friend of mine, and put it in my mom's basement, my family basement, and just go down there and sit and write songs and record. I had my uncle come in too and recorded some of his music. Had some friends come over and I recorded their music and really got into the recording aspect of it. And then, I got married when I was 25, and then I kind of took a break from music from that. Not because, nothing to do with like my wife not supporting it or anything like that, but just other priorities, making money and supporting a family and raising a kid and all that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I did one project during that time period, and it was just a studio project, no live shows or anything like that. It was a satire punk project, and that was with some real pros, actually. And the producer for that was from Universal Records, and I got to learn a lot. It was amazing being in the studio with someone that talented and learning, some of his tricks, everything from drum replacement to, all kinds of arranging harmonies for vocals and things like that.
Sure.
And after I really started music again after I got separated and divorced from my wife. That was kind of like one of the first things I picked up. I moved down to Florida because I was living and working as an attorney in D.C. at the time. And I just sort of embedded myself in a Chinese restaurant called the China King and just started doing like deliveries. And I'd be riding in my car, just writing songs. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to record 52 songs in 52 weeks and just sort of get my game in gear as a producer and just be able to churn out, music. And I did that. And the best of those songs ended up being called Harbor City Meltdown album. And the concept is basically just dealing with divorce and moving to the South and stuff and being embedded in this Chinese restaurant.
Sure. That's interesting. So I assume at some point after kind of getting that together, realizing that you enjoyed that process, that's kind of what spurred the entire movement to kind of, genre hop from concept to concept kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. And the next album was a concept album about, I finally got my act together and moved back to DC. And attorneys make a lot more than Chinese delivery guys, even though that was great work and I loved working with that family.
Hmm.
The next concept album was called Hive Mind, and I wrote it while I got a new lawyer job. I had my own office before while I was married, but I went to work for the man. And my office was in this tall building in DC, and I sat on the roof and ate lunch every day and just looking down at the streets and just observing how the city kind of operates like a living organism. And it's the album is sort of about how the city is alive and how it replicates a living organism, how it like breathe the subway system and the buses are like the circulatory system bringing in the workers into the city, and how the road crew teams repair the roads. It's almost like the immune system, it just repairs itself.
Sure, definitely. That's great.
Yeah.
So, how many albums have you put out under that premise of kind of, genre hopping and then creating a concept album out of it?
5 now. I average about once every 2 years, and I know the music industry people say that's a bad thing and you should be putting out singles, but that's not what I like to do. It's not what I like to listen to. I like to listen to concept albums.
Yeah, so there's
but they
a
take a
couple
lot of time.
there's a couple different schools of thought about that, about how, you have to keep the listener's attention and you should do like monthly or bi-monthly releases or something like that. I myself am a fan of the whole concept album idea, so I appreciate when it's a couple years between, but that's definitely something that's out there. They definitely say that you should release more to keep attention kind of thing. So I definitely feel where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I try to do lifestyle posts in between and stuff, and to pictures from in the studio, because it's not like I just all of a sudden go in 2 years and do another album. I'm working on
Right.
it the entire time between. It just takes a lot of work, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I try to post some stuff about that as opposed to like putting out intermediate tracks or anything like that.
With those albums, are you writing and recording every part, or do you bring in any session musicians? How does that go?
For the first for the first 3, I did everything myself. And part of like recording those 52 songs was really like learning how to play keyboards and learning how to, find my voice as a singer and stuff too, because mostly in the bands I had just played guitar and been the songwriter and did some backing vocals. So, and, on this latest one, I even bought an electronic drum kit, and most of the songs have sequence drums. But, I did play some drums in high school, and I played an entire track on the latest album. This latest album is kind of a cool concept, I think. I don't know how many people relate to a city coming alive or, embedding yourself in a Chinese restaurant. They're fun topics, but this new one I think is something a little more people could relate to. It's about what it's like as an adult to go back to your hometown after having been away for so long. So what I did in January was I pretty much took a vacation to my hometown in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much went there with the expectations that I'd kind of like pick up where I left off and just have fun with all my old high school buddies and stuff like that. And to some extent that happened, but what happens when you do that is nothing's really the same. Everything has changed, and sort of I think at the end of the story, the moral is sort of that, well, I've changed, and there's a reason I'm in my current life somewhere else, and that's where I fit in now.
Yeah, there's that old saying, you can never go home again.
Yeah. And the album's called The Harvest, and it's sort of about how you can't really harvest your childhood. You plant the seeds in in your life, but you can't ever really go back to pick them. Once you finally make some money and you're a little successful, you can't just go back and take that life back. You're kind of where you are now.
Yeah, awesome. So, through those 5 albums, everything else you've done in music, what are some of your, most prominent and motivating memories?
Geez, probably, besides the stuff I mentioned, I mean, that talent show was definitely a big one. But some of the shows we played in college were great too. And really everything, every time we went to the studio was kind of studio magic, I call it. Just going in and you come out with something greater than the parts that went into it. It almost seems like, especially when I played in that punk band. It was called Weekends with Dan. We came in, I had written the parts with a singer named Dan, and we came in with some parts, and we came out with what I think, was really well done project that was greater than those parts, you know?
Sure, definitely. Awesome. Well, where can people find you and check out the albums you put out and everything else that you're working on?
Yeah, I just go by my name, Kevin Borland, at least for the most recent 5 albums. And it's on Spotify, Apple, what do you call it, Amazon, and anywhere you'd listen to, YouTube. There's the last one I got into. What do you call it? The artificial intelligence generated videos. So I put up some mildly entertaining videos to go along with the songs for the last album, and I think I may actually pay someone to actually shoot videos for the upcoming album, or at least for some of them.
Very cool. Well, I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So a message you feel you resonate with that you want to put out there.
Well, sure. I guess you're never too old to do this. I mean, I think people with music in them kind of tend to know that they have music in them, and that's just sort of the way they express themselves. At least most of the musician friends that I've had. But you're never too old, and there's always many different ways to express your artistic side at any age. Even if your back hurts and it's too heavy to carry a guitar, I mean, you could sit in the studio and come up and arrange stuff. You could produce other people. You could, so one day I'd like to do a musical. Actually, that kind of interests me, and I don't know that I know enough connections to actually put on a play. But one of these days, I'd like to try that.